15 horses, 3 generations of careful breeding, all of them dying, and no one could tell him why. Silas Drifter had lost his mother, lost his wife. Now he was watching everything his father and grandfather had built slip through his fingers, one labored breath at a time. Then a letter arrived. A mail-order bride from Kansas City, a woman with secrets she couldn't tell. A woman who had been blacklisted, hunted, erased from her profession for saving the wrong life. Her name was Grace Sullivan. And the moment she stepped off that train, she smelled something no one else had noticed. This wasn't disease. This was poison. Someone was deliberately killing his horses. Someone powerful. Someone who wanted his land badly enough to destroy everything he loved. But here's what the man behind the scheme didn't count on. The woman he dismissed as just another desperate bride was a surgeon's daughter with skills that could expose everything. What happens next is a battle of wills, a fight for survival, and a love story that proves the most unlikely partnerships can save us all. This story carries a truth that cuts deep. Sometimes the person sent to save you doesn't look like a hero. Sometimes salvation comes disguised as desperation. Two broken people choosing to heal each other. If you've ever felt like damaged goods, like your past disqualifies you from a future, this story will change your mind. If you believe that broken people can build beautiful things, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. More stories like this are coming. Tell me in the comments, have you ever found hope in the most unexpected place? And if someone you know needs to hear that their past doesn't define their future, share this story with them. Let's ride. There is a particular kind of silence that settles over a place when something is dying. Not the peaceful quiet of a Sunday afternoon on the porch, but something heavier, the kind that presses against your chest and makes breathing feel like work. Silas Drifter knew that silence. He had heard it twice before in his 42 years. Once when his mother passed in the back bedroom while the preacher read from Psalms, and again when his young wife Sarah slipped away after only 2 winters together. Now that same silence had crept into his stable, thick as smoke, and it was taking everything his father and grandfather had built. The coughing woke him before dawn, not the wet, productive cough of a horse clearing dust from its lungs. This was dry and hollow. The sound of something struggling to pull air through passages that did not want to cooperate anymore. Silas swung his legs off the bed before his eyes fully opened. The floorboards groaned beneath his bare feet, cold even in July. The way old wood gets when it has been sitting in darkness. He did not bother with his boots, just grabbed his flannel shirt from the bedpost and shoved his arms through the sleeves as he moved toward the door. Outside, the sky held that particular shade of purple that comes 20 minutes before sunrise. No stars anymore, but no light either. Just that in-between color that made everything look faded and worn. The stable door hung crooked on its hinges. He had been meaning to fix it for 3 months now. Kept putting it off, kept telling himself tomorrow. The leather strap that served as a handle felt damp in his palm. Morning dew. Or maybe his own sweat. He could not tell anymore. Inside, the smell hit him first. Sickness has a particular odor, sweet and sour at the same time, like fruit left to rot in a root cellar. It mixed with the familiar scents of hay and horse and manure, turning them into something unrecognizable, something wrong. Drummer lay in the first stall. Silas stopped walking. In 15 years, he had never seen that horse lie down when someone entered the stable. Drummer was the kind of animal that greeted every visitor with ears forward and nostrils flaring, curious about who had come to see him. The kind of horse that would nicker softly when Silas appeared as if to say, "About time you showed up." Now he lay on his side, legs curled beneath him at angles that looked uncomfortable. His ribs moved barely with each labored breath. His eyes stayed closed. Silas crossed the distance without remembering the steps. His knees hit the straw beside Drummer's head, and he reached out with a hand that shook despite his best efforts to steady it. The horse's neck burned beneath his palm. Not warm, burning, and the pulse that fluttered against his fingers came weak and unsteady, fading in and out like a candle flame in a drafty room. "Easy, boy." The words came out rough. "Easy now." Drummer did not respond. Did not twitch an ear or shift his weight or give any sign he knew Silas was there. 15 years this horse had carried him through blizzards and droughts, and one particularly bad night when Silas had made poor choices at the saloon and needed someone to get him home safe. Drummer had done it without complaint, walking slow and steady through the darkness while Silas slumped in the saddle. He remembered Sarah laughing on Drummer's back 3 days before the fever took her, her hair loose in the wind. "He is the only one who tolerates my terrible riding, Silas. 15 years, and now this." Silas made himself stand, made himself walk the length of the stable, counting. First stall, Drummer down. Second stall, Bella, the young mare he had bought last spring, down. Her breathing came faster than Drummer's, shallow little gasps that sounded like paper tearing. Third stall, Cooper, down. Fourth, Jackson, down. Fifth, Old Pete, standing but barely. His head hung low, and the water in his trough sat untouched. Silas kept counting. 8 horses lay flat, 7 still stood, but they had stopped eating 2 days ago, and their eyes had taken on that dull, glassy look that meant they were checking out, deciding whether to stay or go. 15 horses. 3 generations of careful breeding, of watching which mare threw the strongest foal, of trading and bartering and sometimes going without new boots so he could afford better feed. 15 horses, and Doc Emery had stood in this very spot 3 days ago, shaking his head, saying words that meant nothing. "I have never seen anything like it, Silas. Cannot tell you what is causing it, cannot tell you how to fix it. Best thing you can do is pray. That is all I have got, pray." Silas reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a letter. The paper had gone soft from handling, the creases worn thin where he had folded and unfolded it a dozen times. He did not need to read it again. He had memorized every word, but he looked at it anyway. "Dear Mr. Dr. Drifter, I accept your proposal. I will arrive on the 2:15 train from Kansas City on July 14th. I am not a fancy woman, and I do not require fancy things. I can cook and clean and keep a house in order. I hope that will be enough. Respectfully, Grace Sullivan." Today was July 14th. In 9 hours, a woman he had never met would step off a train expecting to start a new life, expecting a husband with a working ranch and a future to offer, expecting something other than a man who could not save his own horses, standing in a stable that smelled like death, holding a letter full of promises he could no longer keep. The train rolled through Texas under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Grace Sullivan sat by the window, her hands folded over the leather medical bag in her lap. She had not let go of it since Kansas City, had not let anyone else touch it. Inside were surgical tools and dried herbs and bandages and a journal she had inherited from her father but never finished reading. The entries had grown strange toward the end. References to treatments she did not understand and debts of honor she could not decipher. She watched the landscape roll past. Brown grass, endless horizon. Nothing like the green hills of Kansas or the crowded streets of Philadelphia where she had trained. 6 months ago, she had been standing in a military stockade at Fort Riley, treating a Comanche woman's infected wound. The woman had gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Why do you help us?" the woman had asked. "Because you are dying. That is reason enough." Then the door had burst open. Soldiers dragging her out, an officer's voice cold as winter. "You are done here, Miss Sullivan. Be grateful we are not pressing charges. Aiding enemies of the state, they called it. Blacklisted. No hospital, pharmacy, or doctor would hire her after that." She had answered 12 mail-order bride advertisements. Silas Drifter was the only one who wrote back. The train whistle blew. A sign appeared through the window. "Thornfield." Grace took a breath. "No one knows me here. No one knows what I did. This is a fresh start." She stepped onto the platform. Silas waited under the station overhang, turning his hat in his hands. The brim had gone dark with sweat where his fingers kept gripping it. He had changed his shirt before leaving, the clean one, the one without holes at the elbows. But he could already feel dampness spreading down his back. A whistle cut through the heat, long and low coming from the east. The train rolled in slow, brakes squealing, steam hissing from beneath the cars. 3 people stepped off, an old woman in black clutching a carpet bag, a man in a bowler hat already pulling out his pocket watch and frowning at it, and her. Grace Sullivan stood on the bottom step for a moment before descending. Calico dress, pale blue, faded at the hem where it had been washed too many times. Auburn hair pulled back and pinned, though a few strands had escaped and stuck to her neck in the heat. No smile, no wave. She just stood there with a leather valise at her feet, looking at him. Silas walked toward her, stopped 3 paces away. "Miss Grace." She nodded once. "Mr. Silas." Her voice came out flat, tired. The photograph she had sent with her letter had shown a rounder face, fuller cheeks. The woman in front of him had sharp cheekbones and shadows beneath her eyes that the camera had not captured. He reached for her bag. "I will take that." The weight surprised him, heavy for its size. Not clothes, or not just clothes. Something denser packed inside. He did not ask. On the wagon ride back, Silas said almost nothing. Grace watched the landscape. Brown grass, brown hills, a sky that stretched forever. Then she did something he did not expect. She sniffed the air, frowned. Her brow creased, and she turned her face toward the open country. Silas watched her from the corner of his eye, watched the way her gaze shifted from the horizon to him, then down to his hands on the reins. He was gripping them too tight, knuckles white. When he looked back at her face, she was still watching his hands. The ranch house stood quiet in the afternoon heat. Wooden porch, rocking chair, curtains faded by sun, a woman's touch that had faded along with the woman. Grace saw the stable doors standing open, heard labored breathing from inside. "Your horses. May I see them?" Silas set her valise down on the porch. "You just arrived. You do not need to worry about that. I would like to see them." He refused, walked inside. But as he carried her bag to the bedroom, Grace stayed behind. She paused by the water trough near the stable. When she was certain he was not looking, she dipped her fingers into the water, raised them to her nose. Her face went still. She knew that smell, had learned it from her father when she was 12 years old, after a rancher's well was sabotaged outside Fort Sill. "This is not disease," she thought. "This is arsenic. Someone is poisoning his horses. The question is who and why." She touched the medical bags she had refused to let Silas carry. "And can I save them before whoever is doing this realizes I know?" Grace woke before dawn. The house sat silent around her. The bedroom Silas had given her smelled of dust and lavender, the dried flowers hanging in a bundle by the window. A woman's touch. His wife's, probably. The one who had died. She dressed quickly in the dark. Brown wool skirt, white blouse, practical boots. Her medical bag sat where she had left it beside the bed, and she opened it now, fingers finding what she needed by touch alone. A silver coin. Tarnished around the edges, but still good for what she needed. Her father had taught her this test when she was 12 years old. A rancher outside Fort Sill had lost 6 cattle in a week, and everyone had called it disease until James Sullivan had dropped a silver coin into a cup of well water and watched it turn black. "Arsenic," he had said, holding the darkened coin up to the light. Someone wanted those cattle dead, and they nearly got the rancher, too. Grace slipped out of the house without making a sound. The morning air hit her face cool and damp. Dew clung to the grass, and somewhere in the distance a rooster crowed. The stable loomed ahead, its doors still hanging open, and even from here she could smell the sickness pouring out of it. She went to the water trough first, dipped a tin cup into the murky water, dropped the silver coin inside. Then she waited. The coin sat on the bottom of the cup, catching the first pale light of dawn. For a long moment, nothing happened. Grace held her breath. Then slowly the silver began to change. Gray first, then darker, then black as coal. Arsenic. She was right. Someone was poisoning the horses. Slowly. Deliberately. Probably had been doing it for weeks before the symptoms appeared. She looked at the stable, at the 15 horses dying inside, at the ranch that was crumbling around one man's shoulders. What do I do, she thought. Tell him and risk him not believing me, or act first and prove I know what I'm talking about. She chose action. Silas found her an hour later. The sun had crept above the horizon, painting the sky orange and gold, and he had walked out to the porch to watch it rise the way he did every morning, trying to find something beautiful in a world that kept taking things from him. Then he saw her. Grace Sullivan stood in the middle of the stable yard, covered head to toe in mud and water. Her hair had come loose from its pins and hung in wet ropes around her face. Her blouse was soaked through, clinging to her shoulders, and every water trough in the stable lay overturned around her, their contents soaking into the dirt. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice came out louder than he intended, sharp enough to make the horses shift in their stalls. Grace straightened, met his eyes without flinching. "Your horses drinking water is killing them." Silas crossed the yard in 4 strides. His boots splashed through the puddles she had made, mud splattering up onto his trousers. "You have been here one night. One night. And you think you know better than Doc Emery. Better than me, better than everyone who has been working this land for 40 years. It is arsenic." The word stopped him cold. "Someone put arsenic in your water supply," Grace said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver coin, held it up so he could see. "Most diseases do not turn silver black." Silas stared at the coin. His jaw worked, but no words came out. "Who would poison my horses? I do not know. But I know what arsenic does, and I know how to treat it." She dropped the coin back into her pocket. "My father was an army surgeon. He saw this before. If we act fast, we might be able to save them." Silas looked at the overturned troughs, at the horses in their stalls, at this woman who had arrived less than a day ago and already turned his world upside down. "How do you treat it?" "Activated charcoal and milk. It binds to the poison, helps the body flush it out. But we need to move quickly." Grace worked through the morning. She had found charcoal in the kitchen stove, ground it fine with a mortar and pestle she carried in her medical bag. Mixed it with fresh milk from the single dairy cow Silas kept behind the house. The mixture looked like black mud and smelled worse. Drummer was first. The old horse still lay in his stall, too weak to stand. Grace knelt beside him, cradling his head in her lap, trying to coax the medicine down his throat. But she was anxious, wanting to prove herself, wanting to show Silas that she knew what she was doing. She gave Drummer too much. The horse convulsed. Foam bubbled at his mouth. His legs kicked wildly, hooves striking the stall walls with enough force to splinter wood. His eyes rolled back, showing white, and a sound came out of him that Grace would remember for the rest of her life. "You are killing him." Silas's voice cut through the chaos. He stood in the stall doorway, face white as paper, hands gripping the wooden frame hard enough to make his knuckles pop. Grace panicked. For one terrible moment, her mind went blank, every piece of medical knowledge she had ever learned scattering like leaves in a windstorm. Then her father's voice came back to her. "Panic kills more patients than disease ever did. When you do not know what to do, slow down, think, then act." She took a breath, looked at Drummer, assessed. Too much charcoal, binding up his system instead of helping it flush the poison. She needed to dilute it, get more liquid in him, balance the treatment. She grabbed the bucket of fresh water she had drawn from the well after discovering the poison, poured some into a separate container, added more milk, less charcoal. Gentler this time. Then she worked the new mixture into Drummer's mouth, massaging his throat to encourage swallowing, speaking softly, apologizing. "Come on, boy, come on, I am sorry." I move too fast, but I need you to fight." The convulsions slowed, stopped. Drummer lay still, his breathing ragged but steady, his eyes closed, but they closed normally this time. Sleep, not death. Grace sat back on her heels. Her hands were shaking. Her blouse was ruined, covered in charcoal and milk and horse sweat. She looked up at Silas. He did not speak to her for the rest of the day. Doc Emery arrived that afternoon. He was a small man, stooped by age, with wire-rimmed spectacles perched on a nose that had been broken at least twice. He had been the only veterinarian in Thornfield for 35 years, and he had seen more sick animals than he could count. But he had never seen anything like this. Grace showed him the blackened coin, explained the test, walked him through the symptoms and how they matched arsenic poisoning instead of disease. Doc Emery held the coin up to the light, turned it over in his fingers. 30 years I have been doing this. Never once thought to test for poison. Most diseases do not turn silver black. He looked at Silas. She might be onto something, Silas. Question is, who would do this to you? Silas stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the stable door. He had not come any closer to Grace since the incident with Drummer that morning. I do not know. Someone who wants your land, Grace said quietly. Someone who wants you to fail. Silas's jaw tightened, but he did not argue. That night, Silas sat beside Drummer's stall. The old horse had not moved since morning. His breathing had steadied, and the fever seemed to have broken slightly, but he was still weak, still fighting. Silas sat with his back against the wooden slats, watching the horse's ribs rise and fall. She almost killed him, he thought, but she also might have saved him. I do not know what to make of her. He looked toward the house. A lamp glowed in Grace's window. He could see her shadow moving behind the curtain, pacing, maybe, or working on something. Who is this woman, and why does she care? Outside the ranch, beyond the fence line where the shadows grew thick, a figure sat on horseback. Jed Hollow watched the house through a spyglass, watched Grace moving in her room, watched the empty water troughs scattered across the yard. Then he turned his horse and rode off into the darkness. Behind the First Texas Bank of Thornfield, where the shadows swallowed the moonlight, Jed met with Victor Crane. The banker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, clean-shaven, well-dressed, soft hands that had never held a branding iron or pulled a calf from a difficult birth. Well, the woman, Jed said. She figured out the poison. Victor's expression did not change. How? Some kind of test. Silver coin in the water, turned black. Silence stretched between them. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Then we need a new approach, Victor said finally. Burn them out, and if they do not leave. Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then they burn too. The First Texas Bank of Thornfield was the most permanent structure in a town made of wood and hope. Red brick walls, iron bars on the windows, a brass nameplate beside the door that gleamed even under the layer of dust that coated everything in this part of Texas. Silas tied his horse to the post outside and stood for a moment, looking up at the building. He had come here 3 times in the past year. Each time he had left with less than he arrived with. Today would be different. Today he was not asking for more time or another extension or any of the other desperate measures that had kept him afloat these past months. Today he wanted answers. The inside of the bank smelled like paper and ink and ambition. A young clerk sat behind the front counter, his face pale and nervous, the kind of face that had never seen hard work or sunlight. I am here to see Mr. Crane. Do you have an appointment? No. But he will want to see me. The clerk hesitated. Then he disappeared through a door at the back of the room. A moment later, Victor Crane emerged. He was a tall man, lean in a way that suggested discipline rather than deprivation. Clean-shaven, dark hair slicked back from a high forehead. His suit cost more than most ranchers made in a month, and his hands were soft and white, the hands of a man who had never done anything more strenuous than counting money. Silas Drifter. Victor's smile did not reach his eyes. I heard about your troubles. Terrible thing, horses getting sick. How did you hear? Small town, word travels. Victor gestured toward his office. Please, come in. The office was larger than Silas's entire kitchen. Leather chairs. A massive desk made of oak. Paintings on the walls showing scenes of cattle drives and frontier life. The romantic version that existed only in the imagination of people who had never actually lived it. Victor settled into the chair behind the desk and steepled his fingers. You are 3 months behind on payments, Mr. Drifter. Your livestock is dying. Your hired hands quit months ago. He paused. I hear even your mail-order bride arrived yesterday. Silas said nothing. Victor slid a document across the desk. I am a reasonable man. Sell me the ranch. I will clear your debt, give you $500 to start fresh somewhere else. California, maybe. I hear there is opportunity out there. Silas looked at the document. Did not touch it. My family has worked that land for 40 years, and in 3 months, when you cannot pay, I will take it anyway. Victor spread his hands. This way, you keep your dignity. Silas stood, walked to the door. I will find another way. Victor's voice followed him, cold as a January wind. You have 60 days, Mr. Drifter. After that, the law is on my side. The Dusty Rose Saloon sat at the end of Main Street, wedged between the general store and a shuttered building that had once been a hotel. Silas pushed through the swinging doors and found a seat at the bar. The place was nearly empty at this hour, just a few old-timers playing cards in the corner and a young cowboy nursing a drink at the far end of the counter. Rosa Martinez emerged from the back room. She was a handsome woman in her mid-40s, dark hair shot through with silver, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. She had come to Thornfield 15 years ago with nothing but the clothes on her back and a plan. Now she owned the most profitable business in town. She had also been Sarah's best friend. You look like hell, Silas. Feel like it, too. Rosa poured him a whiskey without being asked. Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping low. You know Victor has been buying land. Silas took a long drink. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn. A familiar one. Buying or taking? Both. Rosa glanced around the room, making sure no one was listening. Henderson's place. The Miller farm, that strip along Comanche Creek. He pauses before continuing. Word is the railroad is coming. San Antonio to Thornfield, then north. And Victor knows exactly where the tracks are going. Silas set down his glass. My land. Rosa nodded. Right through the middle of it. Everything clicked into place. The poisoned water. The pressure to sell. The 60-day deadline that would conveniently end right when Victor needed the land cleared. Silas, Rosa said quietly. Be careful. Victor has money. Connections. He has got State Senator Webb in his pocket up in Austin. You go against him, you are not just fighting a banker. Silas finished his drink and put money on the bar. I appreciate the warning. It is not a warning. Rosa caught his arm. It is a fact. Victor Crane has destroyed better men than you. Do not let him destroy you, too. The ride back to the ranch took 2 hours. Silas spent most of it thinking, turning over the pieces in his mind, trying to see how they fit together. Victor wanted his land, needed it for the railroad, but land with healthy horses and a working ranch was worth more than land stripped bare by disease. So Victor was trying to drive the price down, make Silas desperate enough to sell for pennies. The poison made sense now. Kill the horses slowly, make it look like disease. Wait until Silas was drowning in debt and desperation, then swoop in with an offer that looked like charity. 60 days. He had 60 days to save everything his father had built. Grace was in the kitchen when he arrived. She stood at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. The smell filled the house, sharp and medicinal, willow bark and peppermint, and something else he could not identify. She did not turn when he entered, did not acknowledge him at all. "I went to see Victor Crane," Silas said. Grace kept stirring. He told her everything: the debt, the railroad, the land grab that was slowly strangling every rancher in the county. When he finished, Grace finally turned to face him. "So someone is poisoning your horses to force you into bankruptcy?" "Yes. And you have 60 days before they take everything your father built." "Yes." Silence fell between them. The pot bubbled on the stove, sending up thin wisps of steam. "I can treat the horses," Grace said finally. "It will take time, but I can do it, if you let me." Silas thought about Drummer convulsing on the stable floor. Thought about the fear in Grace's eyes when she realized what she had done. Thought about the way she had not given up, had not run, had stayed and fixed her mistake. "You almost killed Drummer yesterday. I made a mistake. I will not make it again." Beat. "You need me," Grace continued, "and I need somewhere to be. Somewhere no one is looking for me. What are you running from?" She did not answer directly. "Do we have a deal or not?" Silas studied her face. Saw the desperation there, yes, but also steel. This was not a woman who gave up easily. This was a woman who had been knocked down and gotten back up so many times she had forgotten what it felt like to stay down. "We have a deal." They shook hands. The partnership was sealed, not with warmth, but with necessity. Later that night, they sat on the porch. Neither of them spoke. The crickets sang in the darkness, and the stars emerged one by one, thick and bright the way they only looked in Texas. "Sarah used to sit out here every night." Silas's voice came quiet, almost to himself. "Said the stars looked different in Texas than anywhere else. Your wife. She died 3 years ago. Same kind of sickness taking the horses, Doc thought. Maybe. He never knew for certain." Grace said nothing, but she did not leave. They sat in silence. But it was a different silence than before. Something had shifted between them. Something small, fragile, but real. Then a crash from the stable shattered the night. Horses screaming. Silas grabbed his rifle. They ran together. The stable doors hung open, swinging in the wind. Inside, horses stamped and snorted, eyes rolling with fear. Silas counted quickly. Drummer was still in his stall, too weak to move. Old Pete stood trembling in the corner. The others milled about, agitated but present. All except 2. Bell and Copper were gone. Their stall gates stood open, the locks cut clean through with something sharp. A knife, probably. And on the fence post outside, pinned in place with a hunting knife, was a note. Silas pulled it free and read by the light of the moon. 60 days is too long. Now you have 30. Grace stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. "They took your horses." "Yes." "Why?" "To send a message." Silas crumpled the note in his fist. "To show me they can take whatever they want, whenever they want. What are you going to do?" Silas looked at her, at the stable full of sick horses, at the empty stalls where Bell and Copper should have been. "I am going to get them back." They rode out at dawn. Silas on his gray gelding, the one horse still strong enough for hard riding. Grace on a borrowed mare from Doc Emery, a sweet-tempered animal that Rosa had arranged the night before. Grace had insisted on coming. "If they are hurt, you will need me." Silas had not argued. Part of him had wanted to. Part of him had wanted to tell her to stay behind, to keep working on the sick horses, to let him handle this alone. But he was tired of handling things alone. The tracks led west, 3 sets of hoof prints in the dust. Bell and Copper being led by a third horse moving fast but not running. Whoever took them was confident. They did not think anyone would follow. They were wrong. Silas had spent 12 years as a Texas Ranger before settling down on the ranch. 12 years tracking outlaws and bandits and men who did not want to be found. The skills had grown rusty over the past few years, buried under grief and debt and the slow erosion of hope. Now they came back like muscle memory. "Here," he said, pointing at a scuff in the dirt where one of the horses had stumbled. "They stopped for water about 2 hours ago." "How can you tell?" "The way the tracks overlap, and see how the edges have started to crumble. Sun has been on them for a while." Grace looked at him with new eyes. "You were a Texas Ranger." "Long time ago." "Why did you leave?" Silas did not answer, just nudged his horse forward, following the trail. The landscape changed as they rode west. The brown grass gave way to scrub oak and cedar. Red rock formations rose from the earth, carved by ancient rivers, into shapes that looked almost alien, beautiful and dangerous. "Comanche Canyon," Silas said quietly. "We are getting close to the border." "Border of what?" "Land that does not belong to us. Never did." Before Grace could ask more questions, a voice called out from the ridge above them. "You two are a long way from home." Silas's hand dropped to his gun, but the figure that appeared on the ridge was not a threat. A boy, 14, maybe 15, lean and wiry, with dark hair and darker eyes. He held a staff in one hand and stood next to a small herd of goats that scattered across the rocky slope. Tommy Clearwater had survived on the edges of Comanche Canyon for 3 years, ever since his mother died, and left him with no family and no place in the world. He had also never forgotten the woman who saved his mother's life. "You," he said, staring at Grace. "You are the woman from Fort Riley." Grace went pale. "How do you know that?" "You saved my mother. In the stockade. The soldiers dragged you away. But she lived." He paused. "She died last winter. But not from that sickness. You gave her 3 more years." Grace's hands tightened on her reins. Silas looked between them. "You know this boy. I treated his mother." Grace's voice came out barely above a whisper. "It is why I had to leave Kansas." Tommy studied Silas with distrust. "What do you want here, white man?" "My horses were stolen, 2 of them. Tracks led this way." Tommy's expression shifted, something knowing in his eyes. "I saw them. 2 horses being led north by 3 men. They are at the old stone camp. 1/2 mile that way," he pointed. "But you should not go alone." "Why not?" "Because the men who took them are not ranchers. They are killers. The old stone camp had been a trading post once, back before the war. Now it was ruins. Crumbling walls and collapsed roofs, reclaimed by the land that had birthed it. Bell and Copper stood tied to a post near the center of the ruins, frightened but alive. 3 men sat around a fire. 2 of them were strangers, hired guns with hard faces and empty eyes. The third was someone Silas recognized. Jed Hollow. He had aged in the 7 years since Silas had put him in handcuffs. More gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. But the rattlesnake meanness was still there, coiled and waiting. Silas Drifter. Jed stood as they approached, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. 7 years since you put me in Huntsville. I still remember the cuffs. Still remember the cell. You were stealing horses, Jed. Silas kept his voice calm. You are still stealing horses. Some men never learn, and some men do not know when they are beaten. Jed drew. Silas was faster. The gunfight was brief and brutal. Silas shot one man in the shoulder before he could clear his holster. Tommy, who had insisted on coming despite Silas's protests, threw a knife that disarmed the second. Jed fired wild, his shot going wide, and then he was on his horse and riding hard into the canyon, disappearing into the maze of rock and shadow. The camp fell silent. Grace ran to the horses. Belle had a cut on her flank, shallow but bleeding. Copper seemed unharmed, just scared. They will be all right, she said. Minor injuries. Silas nodded. Then he turned to Tommy. Thank you. The boy shrugged. I have nowhere to go. Let me come with you. I can work. Silas studied him. 14 years old, orphaned, mixed blood, surviving on the margins of a world that did not want him. Same age Silas had been when his own father had put him to work on the ranch. You pull your weight, you stay. You cause trouble, you are gone. I will not cause trouble. On the trail back, Grace rode beside Silas. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and red. Tommy rode ahead with the recovered horses, talking to them in a language Grace did not understand. He called you by name, Grace said. The man who ran. He knew you would come. Jed Hollow. I arrested him in '77 for horse theft. He did 5 years in Huntsville State Penitentiary, and now he works for Victor Crane. Seems that way. Silence. Then, why did you leave the Rangers? Silas did not answer for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat. I saw things, did things, followed orders I should not have followed. That is not an answer. It is all the answer I have got, for now. Grace did not push, but something passed between them. Recognition. Two people with pasts they did not know how to carry. They crested the final ridge just as the sun touched the horizon. The ranch lay below them, peaceful in the evening light. The house, the stable, the paddock where the sick horses waited. Then Grace saw the smoke. Orange flames climbed toward the darkening sky. The stable was burning. No. The word tore out of Silas like something physical. He kicked his horse into a gallop, riding hard toward the inferno. Grace followed. The heat hit them before they reached the yard, waves of it rolling off the burning stable, hot enough to make the air shimmer. Smoke billowed thick and black, blotting out the stars, filling their lungs with ash and the smell of burning hay. The horses were screaming. Silas threw himself off his mount before the animal had fully stopped. His boots hit the ground running, carrying him toward the stable doors that stood open and belching flame. "The gates!" he shouted over the roar of the fire. "Open the gates!" Grace was already moving. She ran through the smoke, eyes streaming, lungs burning, and threw open the first stall door she could reach. A horse bolted past her, then another, then a third. Tommy circled outside, guiding the panicked animals away from the flames, keeping them from running back into the fire the way frightened horses sometimes did. Grace counted as they escaped. 10, 11, 12, but not Drummer. Silas stood at the entrance to Drummer's stall. The old horse lay where he had been for days, too weak to stand, too weak to run. The fire had not reached him yet, but it would. The roof was groaning, beams cracking, sparks raining down like hellfire. "Silas." Grace's voice came from somewhere behind him. He barely heard it. "Silas, no." He ran in anyway. The smoke swallowed him. He could not see, could barely breathe, but he had walked this stable 1,000 times, and he knew every inch of it by heart. Drummer's stall was to the left, 6 paces from the door. He found the horse by touch, felt the hot, labored breathing, the heaving sides. "Easy, boy. Come on. We are getting out of here." He tried to drag Drummer by the halter. The horse was too heavy. Over 1,000 pounds of dead weight, and Drummer did not have the strength to help. A beam crashed down 3 feet away. Sparks exploded across Silas's back, burning through his shirt, searing his skin. He did not stop. He got his arms under Drummer's neck, lifted. His back screamed, his muscles burned. Every fiber of his body told him this was impossible. But he had lost too much. His mother, his wife, his hired hands, his pride. He was not losing this horse. He carried Drummer. Later, people would say it was impossible. That no man could lift a horse, not even in pieces. That the fire must have done something to loosen the boards, or that Drummer must have found some hidden reserve of strength. Silas knew the truth. Grief gives you strength you do not have. Love gives you more. He stumbled out of the stable just as the roof caved in behind him. They collapsed together in the dirt, man and horse, as the first drops of rain began to fall. The rain saved what was left. It came down hard and fast, the kind of summer storm that blows in from nowhere and turns the world to mud in minutes. The fire hissed and steamed, its fury quenched by the deluge. Grace found Silas in the mud. His shirt was burned through in places, the skin beneath red and raw. His hands were blistered. His face was black with soot and streaked with rain that might have been tears. But Drummer was breathing. The old horse lay beside him, chest rising and falling, alive against all odds. "You saved him," Grace said. Silas did not answer, just sat there in the mud and the rain, one hand resting on Drummer's neck, staring at the smoldering ruins of everything his father had built. They counted the horses when the rain stopped. 12 survived. 2 did not make it. Jackson, who had been too weak to move, and a young foal born that spring who had never had a chance. Silas stood before the smoking ruins, fists clenched, rain running down his face. Grace approached, stood beside him. "You saved 12, Silas, and lost 2, and the stable." And his voice broke. "Everything I touch turns to ash." Grace put her hand on his shoulder. He flinched, but did not pull away, then stopped touching things alone. Later, they sat in the kitchen. All 3 of them, Silas, Grace, and Tommy, wet clothes dripping, exhausted. The lamp on the table threw long shadows across the walls. "They will not stop," Silas said. "Victor wants this land, and he will burn everything to get it." Tommy spoke up. "Then you need to fight back, but not with guns." He paused. "My people know a plant. We call it sunroot. It cleans poison from the body. Horses, people, does not matter. It grows in Comanche Canyon." Grace leaned forward. "If I had that, I could cure the horses completely, make them strong enough to work again." Silas shook his head. "Comanche Canyon is forbidden ground. White men who go in do not always come out." "I can guide you," Tommy said. "My grandmother's people still live there. They might listen." Silence. Grace and Silas looked at each other. "What choice do we have?" Grace asked quietly. Silas closed his eyes, thought about the ranch, the horses, the 60 days, now 30, ticking away like a countdown to destruction. "We leave at dawn." That night, Grace sat alone in her room. The lamp burned low. Rain still pattered against the window, softer now, the storm fading into drizzle. She held a blank piece of paper in her lap, a pen in her hand. "I came here to hide," she thought, "to start over. Now I am dragging them into danger, the same way I did at Fort Riley." She began to write. "Mr. Dr. Drifter, I have decided it would be best if I left. My presence here has only brought you more trouble. I am not the fresh start either of us hoped for. I wish you—" A sound at the door. Tommy stood there holding a cup of water. "You are leaving." Grace crumpled the paper. "I was thinking about it. If you leave, who fixes the horses?" Tommy's voice was steady. "Who fixes us?" Grace looked at this boy, 14 years old, alone in the world, asking her to stay. "I am not sure I can fix anything, Tommy. My mother said that too, before you came." He left the water and walked away. Grace sat for a long time. Then she unfolded the paper, read what she had written, and tore it to pieces. Dawn broke gray and cold. Silas waited by the horses, saddlebags packed. Tommy stood beside him, a worn leather satchel over his shoulder containing everything he owned in the world. Grace emerged from the house, her medical bag hung from her shoulder. Her hair was pinned back, her jaw set with determination. "Ready?" Silas asked. "Ready." Tommy led the way toward the canyon. Behind them, the ruined stable smoldered, ahead the unknown. 3 days into the wilderness, the world changed. The flat prairie gave way to red rock and scrub oak. Ancient rivers had carved the stone into shapes that looked almost alive. Towers and arches and narrow passages that swallowed the light. Comanche Canyon. Tommy led them through paths invisible to untrained eyes, through gaps in the rock that looked too narrow for horses. along ledges that made Grace grip her reins so tight her knuckles went white. Around a campfire on the second night, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Tommy, how did your mother end up at Fort Riley?" The boy stared into the flames. "The soldiers rounded up our band in '79, took the women and children to the fort. The men were sent to the reservation." His voice went flat. "Or killed." Silas spoke quietly. "I remember that roundup." Grace looked at him. "I was not there. But I heard about it. One of the last campaigns before I quit." He did not say more. But something dark crossed his face, and Grace knew there was more to the story than he was telling. Midday on the fourth day, they were crossing a rocky pass, the canyon walls rising high on either side, when rifle shots cracked the air. "That is far enough." 4 men emerged from the rocks. Bounty hunters, rough and armed and dangerous. Their leader held a wanted poster in one hand and a rifle in the other. "We are looking for the half-breed boy. $50 on his head for horse theft, courtesy of Mr. Victor Crane." Silas stepped his horse in front of Tommy. "The boy is with me. There is no bounty. Paper says otherwise." The leader waved the poster. Crude sketch of Tommy's face. $50 reward. Grace whispered to Silas. "Victor fabricated it. To draw us out." Silas's hand moved to his gun. "Ride away. I am giving you one chance." The leader laughed. "You are outnumbered, old man." Silas drew. The fight was brutal and fast. Silas shot 2 men before they could clear their holsters. Tommy threw a rock that cracked the third man's skull. But the leader got close. A knife flashed. Silas blocked it with his forearm, but the blade slipped past his guard and caught his side. A deep gash along his ribs, blood soaking through his shirt immediately. The fourth man fled into the canyon. Silas collapsed against a boulder, pressing his hand to the wound. "Let me see," Grace said. She tore open his shirt. The wound was bad, not fatal, but deep. He needed treatment now. "The sun root," Tommy said. "It can help. But we need to reach my grandmother's people." Grace used what supplies she had. Bandages, pressure, willpower. "Can you ride?" she asked. Silas looked at her through eyes glazed with pain. "Do I have a choice?" Tommy led them through a narrow passage into a hidden valley. Cottonwood trees lined a clear stream. Scattered teepees rose against the canyon walls. Smoke from cooking fires drifted into the blue sky. Comanche people emerged from the camp, wary, weapons ready. An old man stepped forward. Elder Gray Wolf was weathered as the canyon stone. His face was carved with lines that spoke of wisdom and sorrow. His eyes were dark and deep, seeing more than they revealed. He spoke in Comanche. Tommy answered. Then the old man's gaze shifted to Grace. He studied her for a long moment. His eyes stopped on her wrist, where her sleeve had pulled back to reveal a scar. Thin, precise, the mark of stitches. He reached out, traced the scar with one finger. "This stitch work. I have seen it only once before." "Who made this?" Grace's voice trembled. "My father. When I was 7, I cut myself on his surgical kit." "What was your father's name?" "James Sullivan. He was a surgeon at Fort Sill." A murmur ran through the gathered people. "James Sullivan saved my life," Elder Gray Wolf said. "Winter of 1871. I was shot by soldiers during a raid. He found me in a gully, treated my wound, told the soldiers I was dead." He paused. "I owe him a blood debt, and now his daughter stands before me." Grace stared at him. "I did not know. He never told me. He could not. The army would have hanged him." Elder Gray Wolf placed his hand over his heart. "But I remember, and the debt passes to his blood." Elder Gray Wolf took Grace to a medicine woman. She was ancient and bent, her hands gnarled but steady as she showed Grace the sunroot plant, where it grew, how to harvest it, how to prepare it. Later, alone with Grace, Elder Gray Wolf spoke again. "Your father kept a journal. Did he leave it to you?" "Yes. But I never finished reading it. Read it when you return. You will understand what kind of man he was, and what kind of woman you are meant to be. He gave her a leather pouch filled with sunroot and other medicines. This is your inheritance, not from me, from him. Use it well. That night, Grace treated Silas's wound properly. She cleaned it with herbal antiseptic, stitched it with techniques her father had taught her. Worked by the light of a small fire while Silas lay still, watching her. You did not know about your father, he said quietly. What he did. I thought I knew him. But there was so much he never said. Maybe he was protecting you. Or maybe he did not think I could handle the truth. Silas caught her hand as she finished the last stitch. You handled it today. You handled all of this. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Grace pulled her hand away gently. Not rejection, just not yet. Get some rest. We ride at dawn. In the morning, as they prepared to leave, Tommy approached Elder Gray Wolf. Grandfather, will you come to the wedding when they marry? Elder Gray Wolf looked at Silas and Grace, who were studiously not looking at each other. If they survive what is waiting for them, I will come. What is waiting? The old man's eyes grew dark. The white man who wants their land. He has sent men to watch the roads. They will not make it home unchallenged. Halfway home, they rode into an ambush. Not bounty hunters this time. These were Victor's men, a dozen of them, armed and waiting in a narrow draw where the canyon walls blocked any escape. Jed Hollow sat at their head. End of the road, Drifter. Gunfire erupted. Silas fought back, but he was still wounded, still weak from blood loss. Grace threw a bottle of sleeping powder at one rider, the man slumping in his saddle as the fumes took hold. In the confusion, two men grabbed Tommy. They dragged him onto a horse and rode away before anyone could stop them. Silas. Grace. The boys' screams echoed off the canyon walls, fading into the distance. Jed laughed as he retreated. Crane wants to see you. Tomorrow, at the ranch. Bring the deed or the boy dies. Then they were gone, vanishing into the dust and shadow. They reached the ranch at sunset. Victor Crane waited on the porch. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, smiling his cold smile. Behind him, 15 armed men surrounded the property. More than Silas could count. More than he could fight. Silas. Victor stepped forward. You have caused me a great deal of trouble. Where is the boy? Safe. For now. Victor's smile widened. Here is my offer. One last time. Sign the deed. Walk away. I will give you $300 and the boy. And if I refuse, the boy dies. And you die. And your mail-order bride gets sold to a brothel in San Antonio. He shrugged. I am a businessman, Miss Sullivan. I do not waste assets. Grace stepped forward. Mr. Crane, I want to propose an alternative. Victor raised an eyebrow. Give us 1 week, 7 days. If the ranch is not functional, horses working, debts manageable, we will sign willingly. No lawyers, no fighting. Why would I agree to that? Because if you kill us, people will ask questions. But if we fail on our own, Grace met his eyes. You are the sympathetic banker who tried to help. Victor considered. 3 days, not 7. And I keep the boy until then. No. You give us Tommy now or no deal. You are not in a position to negotiate. Silas's hand rested on his gun. She is not negotiating. Neither am I. Long silence. The wind blew dust across the yard. Somewhere a horse snorted. 3 days, Victor said finally. Keep the boy. But if you are not gone by sunset on the 3rd day, I will burn this ranch to the ground with you inside it. He rode away. His men followed. Night fell. Tommy slept in the kitchen, exhausted from his ordeal. Grace had given him something to help him rest, something from the pouch Elder Gray Wolf had given her. Silas and Grace stood on the porch. Alone. You made a deal without asking me. Again, Silas's voice was hard, angry. I bought us time. You were ready to die. Maybe dying is the only thing I'm good for. Stop it. It is true. Everything I've touched for 3 years has turned to dust. Maybe I should just what? Let them kill you. Let them kill Tommy. Let them... Grace stopped herself. Let them what? Silas asked. You want to die? Grace's voice cracked. You have wanted it since Sarah passed, maybe longer. Silence. The truth hung between them like a blade. You do not know anything about me. I know you ran into a burning stable for a horse. I know you fought 4 men with a knife wound in your side. And I know none of that was bravery. Her eyes were bright with tears. It was hoping someone would end it for you. Silas's face went pale. I came here running from my past, Grace continued. But you are running toward your death, and I will not stand beside you while you do it. She turned to go inside. Grace. She stopped. You are right. She turned back. I have been looking for a way out. For 3 years, I have been praying God would take me the way he took Sarah, but... He looked at her. Then you showed up, and Tommy. And suddenly I started waking up with something other than dread. What are you saying? I do not want to die, not anymore. I want to fight. With you. Grace did not move. Then slowly she walked back to him, took his hand. Then fight. But fight to live, not to die honorably. I do not know how. We will figure it out together. They stood there hand in hand as the stars wheeled overhead. Rosa Martinez appeared at the ranch gate at midnight. Silas, I found something. She was breathless, her horse lathered with sweat. Victor keeps a ledger in his office. Proof of everything. The bribes to Judge Whitmore, the poison purchases, letters to Senator Webb in Austin. Grace stepped forward. If we can get that ledger... His office is locked, Rosa said. Safe behind the desk. But I know when he will be out tomorrow night. The church social. He never misses it. Silas nodded slowly. So we break in. Rosa shook her head. We? Try you. I have done enough just finding this. But Silas, you cannot do it alone, not wounded, not with Crane's men watching the roads. He will not be alone, Grace said. Silas and Grace looked at each other. Tomorrow night, then. Tomorrow night. They planned the break-in at the kitchen table. Rosa had provided a sketch of Victor's house. 2 stories. Office on the 2nd floor. Safe behind a portrait of some long-dead relative whose money had built the empire Victor now controlled. I can climb the drain pipe, Tommy said. Get in through the upper window, too dangerous. If they catch you, they will not. I spent 3 years sneaking past soldiers. Bankers are easier. Grace spoke up. I will go with him. I know locks. My father taught me. Army surgeons sometimes need to get into places they should not. Silas looked at her. And I will be downstairs, watching. The church social was in full swing when they arrived in town. Music and laughter spilled out of the white-clappered church, lanterns strung between the trees casting warm light across the gathering. Half the town was there, dressed in their Sunday best, dancing and eating and pretending that everything was fine. Victor Crane stood in the center of it all, smiling, shaking hands, playing the respectable citizen. Rosa intercepted him with a glass of punch and a laugh, keeping him engaged while Silas, Grace, and Tommy slipped away through the darkness. Victor's house stood at the edge of town, a grand 2-story structure, the finest home in Thornfield, built with money squeezed from 100 struggling ranchers. The back window was unlocked. Victor's arrogance. Grace and Tommy climbed while Silas watched from below, his hand resting on his gun, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of trouble. The window slid open without a sound. They dropped inside. The office smelled like leather and cigars. A massive desk dominated the room. Leather chairs, bookshelves lined with volumes that had never been read, purchased by the yard to project an image of culture. And there, on the wall behind the desk, a portrait of some stern-faced ancestor. Grace moved to it, felt along the frame, found the hidden catch. The portrait swung aside, revealing a safe. Grace pulled a set of picks from her pocket. Tools her father had carried during the war, used to break into Confederate supply cabinets and rescue medical supplies. She worked the lock by feel. Click, click, click. The safe opened. Inside, she found stacks of cash, a ledger bound in black leather, and letters. She pulled out the letters first, read by the dim light filtering through the window. Letters from State Senator Marcus Webb in Austin, discussing the drifter problem, how to make it disappear legally. References to poison purchases and hired men and bribes paid to Judge Whitmore. "This is bigger than we thought," Grace whispered. "Victor has protection in Austin." "We have 3 days," Tommy said. "What do we do with protection in Austin?" Footsteps in the hallway. They froze. Jed Hollow stood in the doorway. "I knew you would come." Grace reached for a bottle in her pocket. The sleeping powder that had worked so well before. "Do not bother," Jed said. "I am not here to stop you." Silas appeared behind Jed, gun drawn. "Then why are you here?" Jed's hands were empty, raised. "Because I heard something tonight." Crane was talking to his foreman. Said, "After this is done, he does not need me anymore. Said men like me are loose ends." "So he is planning to kill you," Silas said. "Soon as you are out of the way, I am next." Jed's voice was bitter. "I am a lot of things, Drifter. A thief, maybe a coward. But I am not dying for a banker." "What do you want?" Grace asked. "To disappear? After this is over, I am heading to Mexico, but first," he looked at Silas, "I will give you something. The night of the deadline. Crane plans to bring 20 men, not to take the ranch, to burn it, with you inside. You are sure? I am the one who is supposed to light the match." Silence stretched between them. "Take the ledger," Jed said. "Take him down. And when you do, remember that I helped. It will not make up for what I did, but maybe it is a start." He stepped aside. They passed. They made it out of the house, out of town, back to the ranch. The moon had risen full and bright, casting silver light across the landscape. Grace and Silas stood by the ruins of the stable, catching their breath. "We did it," Silas said. "We did." Silence. He looked at her, mud-streaked, exhausted, brave. "When Jed was standing there, I thought I might not get another chance." "Another chance for what?" He did not answer with words. He kissed her. It was not gentle, it was not polished. It was desperate and real. The kiss of 2 people who had been fighting death and finally decided to choose life. When they broke apart, Grace was breathing hard. That was overdue. I was going to say unexpected, but overdue works too. He laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since she had arrived. Inside the house, Grace read through the letters. "Silas, look at this. A letter dated 2 weeks ago. The U.S. Marshal from San Antonio has been asking questions about land acquisitions in Thornfield County. Handle the drifter situation before he arrives. We cannot afford scrutiny." Silas's eyes widened. "The Marshal is coming. If we can get word to him." "Rosa, she knows people. She can get a message out. Tomorrow morning we send word at first light." Grace folded the letter carefully. 3 days. We just need to survive 3 more days. Dawn of the 3rd day. The ranch had transformed. 12 horses stood healthy in the paddock. The sunroot medicine had worked exactly as Elder Grey Wolf promised. Drummer was standing, walking, almost himself again. Tommy had been drilling the horses, getting them used to work. Grace had treated every animal, every wound, every trace of poison. Silas had been preparing defenses, rifle positions, escape routes, the old ranger protocols coming back like remembered prayers. Rosa arrived with news. The message got through. Marshal Dawkins left San Antonio 2 days ago. Should arrive by sundown. Silas nodded. We just have to hold until then. Midday. A dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Victor Crane arrived with 20 men, just as Jed had warned. Armed, ready for violence. Mr. Drifter, Victor smiled his cold smile. The 3 days are up. They are up at sundown. By my count, you are early. I have decided to expedite matters. Victor looked at the healthy horses at the fortified ranch. I see you have been busy. Impressive, but it will not matter. Sign the deed, or my men will take the ranch by force. And this time there will not be a fire. There will be graves. Silas stepped off the porch. Grace stood beside him. Tommy was visible on the roof, rifle ready. I have got something for you, Crane. Silas held up the ledger. Victor's face changed. I know about the poison. I know about the bribes to Judge Whitmore. I know about Senator Webb in Austin. You are bluffing. Try me. Victor's eyes darted to his men. They were uneasy. This was not the plan. Kill them. Kill them all. Burn everything. His men hesitated. This was murder, not business. You really want to die for a banker? Silas asked. The foreman spoke. Mr. Crane, we signed on for intimidation, not killing women and children. I pay you to do what I say. A voice from the riders. Not anymore. Jed Hollow rode forward, separating from Victor's group. It is over, Crane. I told them everything. What you are planning, how you are disposing of loose ends. 3 more men broke away, joining Jed. Victor's coalition was crumbling. Fine, Victor screamed. I will do it myself. He pulled a pistol, aimed at Grace. If I cannot have this land, no one will. Silas drew. Faster than he had moved in years, faster than he thought possible. His bullet took Victor's gun hand. The pistol dropped. Silas crossed the distance in 4 strides. Kicked the gun away. I was a Texas Ranger for 12 years. I have killed men better than you, but I'm not going to kill you. You're going to stand trial, and everyone in this county is going to know what you did. Hoofbeats. The dust settled to reveal Marshal Charles Dawkins and 4 riders wearing the badge of the United States Marshal's Office. Victor Crane, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, poisoning of livestock, and bribery of state officials. Victor, cradling his shattered hand, was dragged away. Jed approached Silas one last time. I am still leaving for Mexico. Before anyone decides I need to be arrested too, Jed. The man paused. You could have let this happen. You did not. I will not forget that. I am not looking for forgiveness. Just a head start. He rode away. This time Silas let him go. The sun was setting. The marshal's men were taking statements. Rosa was serving coffee from a pot she had somehow produced. Silas and Grace stood apart from the chaos, watching the sky turn orange and red. It is over, Grace said. This part. There will be trials, testimony, months of it. And then we rebuild. The stable, the herd, everything. He turned to her. I am not good at this. At asking. But I need to know. Are you staying? Silas Drifter. I crossed half a country to marry a stranger. I treated poisoned horses. I broke into a banker's safe. I have been shot at, chased, and nearly burned alive. She took his hand. I am not going anywhere. He pulled her close. Then I have one more question. Yes. Will you marry me? Proper this time. Not because of a letter, because I cannot imagine facing tomorrow without you. I thought I came here looking for a fresh start. But that is not what I found. What did you find? Home. She kissed him as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Tommy called from the porch. So does this mean I can call her Ma now? Grace laughed. Let us get through the wedding first. When is the wedding? Silas and Grace looked at each other. Soon. Very soon. 3 months later, the ranch had been reborn. The stable stood new and strong, built with lumber donated by the townspeople who had watched Victor Crane dragged away in chains. Bigger than before. Better drainage. A real roof that would not leak when the winter rains came. The herd had grown to 18 horses. Belle had foaled. A beautiful colt they named Justice. Copper had recovered fully and was being trained as a cutting horse. Drummer spent his days in the pasture, retired to a life of sunshine and apples, occasionally deigning to let little Sarah ride him around the paddock at a gentle walk. Grace had converted the old storage shed into a clinic. A sign hung over the door: Sullivan and Drifter Medical Services. People and animals welcome. The town had started coming to her. First the ranchers with sick cattle, then the mothers with colicky babies, then everyone. Tommy was packing his bag when Grace found him. He was 15 now, taller than he had been a year ago, his face losing the last of its boyish roundness. Dr. Hartley says I can start as his apprentice next month. He will teach me real medicine. You already know real medicine. I know your medicine. His medicine is different. More books. Grace smiled. You will need both. She handed him a leather pouch. Her father's surgical tools cleaned and sharpened. These belonged to my father. Then they were mine. Now they are yours. Tommy held them like sacred objects. I will make you proud. You already have. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Under the great oak tree behind the house, chairs were arranged in rows. The whole town was there. Rosa Martinez in her finest dress, Doc Emery in a suit that smelled of mothballs, even some of the ranchers who had initially shunned Silas. And there, in the front row, Elder Grey Wolf and 6 members of his band dressed in traditional clothes. The townspeople were uneasy, but no one said anything. This was Silas Drifter's land, and Silas Drifter could invite whoever he pleased. Grace walked down the aisle in a simple white dress. Not fancy, not expensive, a sprig of wildflowers in her hair. Silas waited at the altar, clean-shaved for the first time in years, wearing his father's old wedding suit, altered to fit. The preacher spoke the traditional words. Then Silas asked to speak. Before I put this ring on your finger, there is something I need to do. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Sarah's wedding ring, the one he had carried for 3 years. Sarah was my first love. She taught me how to hope. When she died, I thought that was the end of my story. He knelt down, placed the ring at the base of the oak tree. Sarah, you are still here. You will always be here. But I cannot carry you anymore. I have to let you rest. He stood, faced Grace. This ring. He held up a new ring, simple silver. This is for the future, for the life we are going to build, not replacing the past, but growing beyond it. Grace's eyes shone with tears. Silas, I came here expecting nothing, hoping for safety maybe, a place to hide. Instead, I found someone worth fighting for, someone worth staying for. She took the ring. I promise to stand beside you, in sickness and health, in drought and plenty, in fire and rain, for all the days we have left. The preacher pronounced them married. They kissed as the crowd cheered, and as Elder Grey Wolf raised his hand in blessing. 3 years later, summer of 1887, Grace sat on the porch watching the sunset. In her arms, Sarah Sullivan Drifter slept, 2.5 years old, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's steady eyes. Silas rode in from the north pasture, not on Drummer. Drummer had passed last winter, peacefully, in his sleep. Silas had buried him under the oak tree near where he had laid Sarah's ring. Now he rode Drummer's grandson, a bay colt they had named Hope, Papa. Little Sarah woke, squirming in Grace's arms. Silas dismounted and caught his daughter as she toddled toward him. Were you good for Mama today? I helped with the horses, Grace laughed. She tried to feed Hope's oats to the chickens. That is not helping. That is creative resource redistribution. Tommy emerged from the house, 19 now, tall, wearing a vest that marked him as Dr. Hartley's official assistant. Letter came from Elder Grey Wolf. He wants to know if you are coming to the summer gathering. Of course we are. He also says Sarah needs a Comanche name. He has some suggestions. Tell him we will discuss it when we see him. Tommy grinned and went back inside. The sun had set. Stars emerged, thick and bright, the way they only looked in Texas. Grace and Silas sat in the rocking chairs, little Sarah asleep between them. In the distance, a train whistle sounded. The railroad had come through last year, but it curved around the ranch, not through it. a compromise brokered by Marshal Dawkins, who had testified that the original route was chosen through illegal means. "Some folks say I am stubborn," Silas said. "You are stubborn. And what does that make you?" "Lucky." He reached over, took her hand. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not sent that letter, if I had not answered? Every day. And every day I thank God I did. I thought I was coming here to hide, to disappear. Instead I found home. More than that. I found the person I was supposed to become." They sat in silence as the stars wheeled overhead. On the table beside them lay Grace's father's journal, finally read. Next to it, a new journal, hers, filled with medical recipes that combined Western surgery and Comanche healing wisdom. The first page read, "For Sarah, my daughter, and for all the daughters who will come after. This is our inheritance. Not land, not money, the knowledge to heal, the courage to stay, the wisdom to know that love is not something you find. It is something you build, one day at a time, one choice at a time." The wind carried the sound of Grace singing a lullaby, the same old tune she had hummed to Drummer on the night she decided to stay. "Go, go, go, my love, go calmly. Go and sleep, go without fear. For the one who loves you dearly will watch over you while you are here." And there, under the Texas stars, the ranch stood whole and healed. Lights glowing in the windows, horses in the paddock, the oak trees standing sentinel over the graves of the old and the gardens of the new. A mail-order bride had arrived with a hidden talent, and she had saved everything, not just the struggling ranch, but the man who owned it. And in doing so, she had saved herself. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.